Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are going to start looking at how to get the Pokemon images on the page. So let me go and look at the website real quick. If we spin this up, we hit click me. Right now we've got it so we can see the names and a box, a div, that's colored, and we also have them in a shorter list, so they're kind of looking like this. Right now they're like look like long lightsabers or something, but we're going to eventually get them to be the shape of the images, and we're going to put the images in this blue box, and this blue box is going to change to the shape of the image, and if it doesn't, we'll make it. So, but in order to, so at this point, let's look at the how we're going to get the images. So if we go in here, we can see this Pokemon URL here, right? Let's go ahead and copy this. Actually, if I hover over this, it gives you follow link, command and click. Yours might say something different, but if I click this, this will actually pop up the data, the raw data. As you can see, there's a results list right here, and that has made of these objects there's a bunch of these objects, and each of these objects has a name and a URL. So inside of here, the data has a results on it. So this whole thing at this level, this is what's called the data right now. We're putting this value into the parameter called data, and so it's called data. And then when we add names to HTML, we are grabbing the data and we're calling dot results on it. And dot results is right here. That's how you reference a field on an object. So data is an object, and it has a field on it called results. And results is a list. So that's why it was square brackets with all these items in it with commas separating them. So that makes this a list. And so results is a list. And so when we map through that, we're going through each Pokemon, and when it says Pokemon, that represents one of these objects that has a name and a URL. And so inside of here, we're going to be referencing Pokemon.name right here. We're not referencing the URL, but that's where the images can be gotten from. So if we want to go, so the cool thing about the way this, again, we're using the plugin called Pretty Print, called JSON Formatter, this one right here. So it's called, the plugin called JSON Formatter that allows us to see it like this. Otherwise, it would just look like this when you look at it. But we have this parsed view, and this is raw, and this is parsed. And so what we can do here, we can do a lot more than just have it, close and open these things to what they call this collapsing and expanding them. But we can actually go to this URL. So we just click on this, and now suddenly I'm in the Pokemon 1 URL. If you look back, this is the difference between this and this URL is just that this one has a /1 at the end. Other than that, it's exactly the same. So if you put a /1 at the end of this, I go to the same place. So now I'm in the same place. But if I go back, so as you can see, this is /1, 2, 3, 4. So Bulbasaur is 1, Ivysaur is 2, Venusaur, I don't know why they made them, this one number 1, this number 2. They're not alphabetical order. There's some other order. It may just be random. It doesn't matter. But the point is that this URL here actually will take you to the screen that will give you a whole bunch of information about Bulbasaur. So they have a list of abilities, the base experience, forms. These are like in-game properties that allow you to actually construct a whole game off of this, where you could have them fight each other, and you could do all kinds of like random number generator things that would allow variability to the play. There's moves, Razor Wind, and different types of moves they can do. So this is another list. The name of the thing is, of the Pokemon is called Bulbasaur. The species is, I guess, the same as the name. I'm not sure why they have a species. And then we have the most interesting thing here, the sprites. Sprites is another word for video game images. So a sprite is representative of a character usually. And so if you look at this, it says back default, back shiny, front default. If I click this front default, this is actually a tiny image of a Bulbasaur. So if I go back, and I gotta minimize all these things again because it expands them every time. But if I go back to sprites, okay, so that's a really tiny one. But this is actually the default, right? And now we have other. In this we have a default for Dream World. So this is a different image. Well, that looks a little bit bigger. It's a different looking thing though. If I go back, and so on and so forth. So each one of these things has, each one of these sprites, if you go into this data structure, you realize other is a category of a list of other kinds of sprite images. And then we have versions. Well, generation 1, generation 2, generation 3, generation 4. This is because there's been a whole bunch of Pokemon games. And each of them are called generations, I think. Or maybe some people who know more about Pokemon than I do. All I know is that each of these represent different images that look pretty close to the same thing. Now, if we go to generation 4 or 5, I think, this is the one where we have the animated ones, if I'm correct. That might be correct. Let me see. Nope, that's definitely, well, that's animated, but that is, yeah, that's an animated one. Look how tiny that is. So these are the level 5, generation 5 is animated GIFs, they call them. So if we grab this now and go all the way back up. So what we want to do is we want to be able to access all the way down in this data to the sprites to get the sprite that we need. And you can get whatever sprite you want if you can figure out how to reference it. But I'm going to reference generation 5. There's black and white, which I guess is the only one. Anyway, so I'm going to grab this. Oh, here's animated. There it is. That says animated. That's what I was looking for. So as an animated one and a back, front. So if I click on the front, that's an animated, so it says animated. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to reference this. So we are going to start by adding some code that will allow us to make another network call inside of a network call. So we made this network call. We get that, when I say inside, I mean we call this get, and this calls this the first URL. And then from that URL, we have the data that has the list of Pokemon in results, and then each of these Pokemon has a name associated, a .name and a .url. So we're going to start by just logging the log the Pokemon URL. So we're going to call this Pokemon URL, and then we're going to set a second comma. So when you do a console log, if you put a comma between them, then you can pass different values. But if you just try to pass a parameter straight in there, you're going to have problems. This makes it easy. So you can do Pokemon.url. So now if I put a semicolon at the end of that, so now if I hit save, every single one of these, we're going to have the log of the H2, which is not an H2 tag anymore, name with div tag. So I'm going to change that to div so it's accurate now. So let's go ahead and hit Command S and save this, or Control S. You can go up here if you don't know what that is and go to File, and there's a Save, and it'll tell you what the shortcut is for you. And so we'll save that, and then we'll go to this guy. All right, refresh and hit click me. So now if I inspect, look at our logs. Scroll that up, and this closes. All right, so now you can see we have a Pokemon URL, and you can see there 1, 2, 3, 4, the same as we saw in the website when we were looking at that URL. So now we can say, okay, great, we've got a Pokemon URL. So now what we need to do is use this URL to make another network call to get the image. So now we want to get the image and insert the image into the container, the Pokemon container. So what we want to do next, so we've inserted the name into the Pokemon container here. So let me just go ahead and, I'm going to Command X and cut that line and paste it down here, because this is actually adding the name to the container, and this is adding the URL. So we are going to, with the image. So what we need to do is we need to actually add a image tag. So the way we create an image tag is the same way we create the button, or the same way we create the div. We have a document.createElement. We have a document.createElement. So we're going to do that again. So document.createElement, hitting tab to autocomplete. And then in quotes, we call it IMG. I believe that's what it's called. And we are going to assign this to a variable. So if we right click, there is a, there's actually a way to extract that. Use a shortcut you can use that will automatically assign this to a variable, create a variable and assign it to it. But let me see, Command Option V. Yeah, wait, extracted. Why am I down here? Where did that just do? So where's hello at? Okay, that's not what I meant to do. So I'm going to Command Z and Command Z. Okay, so I'm not sure why I extracted that when I had this guy selected. Looks like that is Control. So mine is Command Option V, extracts a variable, but it looks like. All right, let's see what happens. We're going to give it the name of picture or image. We'll just call it image. Image. No, for whatever crazy reason, the refactoring tool here is not very good. And it's whenever I try to extract it, it's actually not selecting this. It's grabbing this entire thing from all the way to here. It's grabbing all of that. And that's the only thing it's letting me extract, which I've already got it extracted. It's already called Pokemon list. So it doesn't make sense that it would be extracting it again. But whatever, that's, sometimes these tools don't work very well, and that's Visual Studio. So let's just do this easy. So const image equals. So now we have an image, and it's called, and it is an image tag. So we want to now set that tab did not help me. I also didn't spell it right. Image, that's probably why. Tab dot set attribute. This is where this set attribute from up here becomes really helpful, because on a regular image tag you have a if I were to create an image tag, img, and then there's a source src, and then if you close this, okay, and this doesn't have to have, in fact it wouldn't really have a opening and closing tag like you have for body here, where it has an opening tag looks like this and a closing tag looks like this. And this is the opening bracket and the closing bracket of the opening tag, the opening bracket and the closing bracket of the closing tag. Here we have just an opening bracket and a closing bracket and it's the entire thing. So this is what's called a self-closing tag or something, I forget exactly. But basically it looks like this. So this is what an image would look like. So and we could also put a style tag in here. That would be Command Z. I would, okay. When you do an autocomplete, you tab to autocomplete, you make sure there's a space after, otherwise it won't work. So I've hit tab, now it's style, and I can, inside of here, I can start adding styles. And we might need to do that. We probably will need to do that. And for now, we're going to create an image with a source tag, and we're gonna do this with code, with JavaScript code. So we're gonna do this And you can look up img tag HTML and Google, and it'll give you a bunch of details of how that works. In fact, if I just go like now and look at that, if I do img tag HTML, you come up with this, and you can get information about it: image source, alt, width, height, different things like that. And so this is the kind of thing that you can, this will teach you about img tags, which are image tags. If you want to search that, you can do that. And I encourage you to get practiced in searching, Google searching things in certain ways, so that, like, you need to add the word HTML, otherwise you're not going to find it. So anyway, all right, so let's go back to JavaScript, and let's go ahead and set the attribute. So the attribute that we want to set here is source. So, oops. But we can't set the source yet because we haven't actually called this. So we have this create element. We can't pass this URL because this URL is not a, okay, so first of all, we have, so I have src and then a comma, just like this. The first parameter, this is a function. We're calling a function called setAttribute that is on an object called Pokemon container. That's why there's a dot here. And that's what, that's what this is right here. This is image. We have and that Pokemon container is a create element. So if you hover over this, this is a HTML div element. If you look at the top up here, this is the type. And if you hover over this, and that's because that's what tells you what kind of methods you can call on it. And then if I go over here and look at the this create element, this is a HTML image element. So this is creating an object that can be used to create a image element. So if now we need to have a URL. We don't have a URL, so we don't know. We either need to put a path to an image or a URL, which is a way to get an image from the internet, which is kind of like what we did when we clicked on the link here and we saw an image here, is because it was a URL to an image. So we are going to do that next. And but now we have this image, and we're going to set the attribute. Let's go ahead and set a another attribute, image dot set attribute, and this attribute is going to be we'll just call it style. And then we're going to do comma, and then we're going to do width colon 200 px semicolon height colon 200 px semicolon. So we're just going to give two styles, height and width, and then we're going to add it to this container. So you need to put a semicolon there, and now we've created an image tag that has a source that's not actually a source, because we don't actually have the source for that image yet, because we have to go in, call this URL, and then get it out of the information that URL returns to get that the URL for the image. So if we but we want to add this image to the Pokemon container. So Pokemon container dot append, and we're going to call this pass the image. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Let's see what way it fails. So if we refresh, click me. So now you can see, if I close this, each one of these has an image that's 200 pixels by 200 pixels, but it doesn't actually have an image because we don't actually haven't passed the image URL in there, so it doesn't know what the image should be. But this is what it looks like next. So we could potentially make this much smaller. I think that's a little bit too big, but let's do it 100 px by 100 px. 100 pixels by 100 pixels. So if we hit this save, and now we hit refresh, click me. So now we've got this guy. We can fiddle with these a little bit if we want to, whatever you want to, and you can make this whatever you want to do. It might be, sometimes it's fun fiddling with styles and trying to make it look perfect to the way you want to look. But for now, we need to solve the problem of how do we get this URL. So what we're going